Honey, do you have cash, or are you going to pay with a card? Jessica's voice cut the air like a sharp knife. 12 pairs of eyes stared at me. 12 people who had just devoured lobsters, imported salmon, wines that cost more than my monthly rent. 12 mouths that now waited for my answer, with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. I smiled. I opened my purse slowly, and then I said something that no one expected to hear. But let me tell you how I got to that moment, sitting in a restaurant where a single table had cost $8,000. It all started 3 days earlier. Ryan, my son, appeared at the door of the tiny room where I lived. Yes, a tiny room, because I no longer lived in my house. Well, technically it was still my house, but that's another story that I'll tell you in a moment. Ryan knocked twice. "Mom, are you in there?" His voice sounded cheerful, almost forced. I opened the door, and there he was, with that smile I had known since he was a baby. But now, that smile came with something else. Something I had learned to recognize in recent months. Need. "Mom, I have wonderful news." He walked in without waiting for an invitation. He looked around the 10 by 10 foot room where I now spent my days. A twin bed, a chair, a coat rack with 4 dresses, a window that looked out onto the alley. "We're going to have a family dinner, something intimate, special, to celebrate Jessica's mom's birthday. Eleanor, my son's mother-in-law, a woman I had seen exactly 3 times in 2 years. It's just a normal dinner, Mom, nothing extravagant, but it would mean a lot to Jessica if you were there." Something in my chest tightened. Family dinner. It had been so long since I'd heard those words directed at me with real affection. "When is it?" I asked, though I already knew I would say yes. I always said yes when Ryan asked me for something. That's how it had been my whole life. This Saturday, at 8 o'clock, at La Maison Rouge, that French restaurant downtown. La Maison Rouge. I had passed by that place once. The red velvet curtains, the chandeliers shining through the glass, the people going in with coats that cost more than a car. "Are you sure, son? That place must be very expensive." Ryan laughed. That laugh that used to be genuine when he was a boy. "Mom, don't worry about that. It's a special occasion. Besides, we're family." Family. That word echoed in my ears long after Ryan left. I sat on the bed and looked out the window. The alley was dark, even though it was barely 6 o'clock in the evening. From there, I could hear the sounds of the main house. My house. The house I had bought with 40 years of work as a seamstress. The house where I raised Ryan alone after Michael abandoned us. The house that had 3 spacious bedrooms, a yard with lemon trees, a kitchen with tiles I had picked out one by one. The house that was no longer mine. It had been 8 months since that afternoon. Jessica and Ryan had arrived with papers. "Mom, we need to talk about something important." They sat across from me at the dining room table. My dining room. Jessica took some documents out of her elegant purse. "Look, Carol, Ryan and I have been doing some research. With the new estate tax laws, if something were to happen to you, Ryan would lose this house. The government would take almost everything." Ryan nodded, taking my hand. "Mom, the solution is simple. If you put the house in my name now, we avoid all those problems. It's just a piece of paper. You keep living here, just like always. Nothing changes. We're just protecting your assets." I was 65 years old, but I wasn't stupid. "And if I put it in your name, nothing really changes?" Jessica smiled. That smile that showed all her perfect white teeth. "Of course not, Carol. This is your house. It always will be. It's just a legal formality. A protection." I looked at Ryan, my son, my only son, the boy I had raised alone, the man who was now looking at me with pleading eyes. "All right, if you say it's for the best," I signed. I signed because I trusted. I signed because he was my son. I signed because I thought blood meant something. 2 weeks after I signed, Jessica knocked on my bedroom door. "Carol, I need to talk to you." She came in and sat on my bed without asking. "Look, I have exciting news. Ryan and I are going to remodel the house. We're going to do something beautiful. But during the construction, there's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of dust. We don't want it to affect you." I nodded, confused. So we thought you could stay in the utility room for a few months. Just while we finish, it has everything you need. A bed, a small bathroom. You'll be very comfortable. The utility room, that 10 by 10 foot space I had used to store boxes and tools. For how long? I asked. Jessica shrugged. 2-3 months, max. You know how these things are, but it'll be worth it. The house is going to be gorgeous. Those 2 months turned into 8. The remodel never finished. There was always something else to do. There was always a reason I couldn't go back to my room. And slowly, without me noticing exactly when, I stopped being the owner of the house and became the tenant of the tiny room out back. But Saturday came, and I got dressed in my best clothes. A wine-colored dress I had sewn myself years ago. Black shoes I had polished until they shined. I combed my gray hair into a simple bun. I looked at myself in the small, cracked mirror hanging over the sink. A 65-year-old woman looked back at me. Wrinkles around her eyes, hands weathered by decades of sewing, but there was still dignity in that face. There was still strength. Ryan picked me up at 7:30. We drove in silence. I looked out the window at the illuminated streets. Mom, I just want you to know that tonight is important for Jessica. Her family is going to be there. Please, just be yourself. Be myself. As if I were some kind of problem that needed to be managed. We arrived at La Maison Rouge and my stomach tightened. The place was even more elegant than I remembered. A doorman in a maroon uniform opened the car door. Inside, everything was golden light and immaculate white tablecloths. Ryan led me to a long table in the back of the main dining room, a table where 11 people were already seated. Jessica stood up when she saw us. She was wearing an ivory-colored dress that probably cost more than 3 months of my old rent. Carol, so glad you made it. She hugged me. But it was one of those empty hugs. No warmth, no real meaning. Come, sit here. Jessica pointed me to a chair at the corner of the table. The chair farthest from the head. The chair where you put the guests who don't matter as much. I sat down slowly. I looked around the table and counted mentally. 12 people in total. Eleanor was at the head, in a champagne-colored dress and a pearl necklace that glittered under the lights. Beside her, 2 of Jessica's sisters I had never seen before. Then, 3 cousins, an uncle. 2 young nephews who wouldn't stop looking at their phones. Ryan and Jessica, and me. The only one who didn't really belong at this gathering. Well, now that we're all here, let's order. Jessica snapped her fingers and a waiter in an impeccable black jacket appeared. Bring the wine list first, and the full menu. The waiter nodded and disappeared like a ghost. I watched everything with wide eyes. The crystal glasses, the silver cutlery, the cloth napkins folded into the shape of a swan. Everything sparkled. Everything was expensive. Everything was too much for a simple family dinner. The wines arrived first. Bottles with labels in French that I couldn't read. The waiter presented them as if they were treasures. This is a Chateau Margaux from 2010. And this, a Romani Conti. Jessica didn't even look at the prices. Bring 3 bottles of the first and 2 of the second. I swallowed hard. I had seen wines like that in magazines. I knew a single bottle could cost hundreds of dollars, maybe thousands. Then the menus arrived. Thick pages of creamy paper with gold lettering. I opened mine and my hands trembled slightly. Foie gras, lobster, Wagyu steak. Every dish had a price that made my monthly pension look like a joke. Carol, do you know what you're going to order? Eleanor's voice pulled me from my thoughts. It was the first time she had spoken directly to me all night. I'm still looking. Eleanor smiled. A kind smile. Different from her daughter's. Try the lobster. They say it's prepared divinely here. One by one, everyone ordered. Jessica ordered the most expensive steak. Her sisters ordered lamb with black truffle. The cousins ordered seafood. The nephews wanted pasta with caviar. Ryan ordered a cut of steak that cost $200. When it was my turn, my voice sounded small. Just a Caesar salad, please. Jessica laughed. That laugh that sounded like breaking glass. Oh, Carol, don't be modest. We're celebrating. Order something good. Everyone was looking at me. Waiting. All right. The salmon, then. The waiter wrote it down and disappeared again. The food began to arrive, dish after dish, course after course. I watched in amazement as the table filled with food that looked like art. Towers of seafood, meats that were rare in the center, sauces that formed perfect designs on the plates, and the wine flowed. Bottles were emptied and new ones appeared. Jessica laughed loudly. Her sisters talked about their latest vacations in Europe. The cousins discussed luxury cars. I ate my salmon in silence, trying to make myself invisible. "Mom, are you okay? You're very quiet." Ryan leaned toward me. His breath smelled of expensive wine. "I'm fine, son. Just tired." He nodded and went back to his conversation with Jessica's uncle about investments and stocks. I kept eating slowly. Every bite tasted like guilt. Every sip of water reminded me that I shouldn't be here. That this wasn't my world. That I was the woman who lived in a 10 by 10-foot room and received $200 a month to survive. Because that's what they gave me. $200. After I signed the house over, after they moved me into the tiny room, Jessica appeared one morning with an envelope. "Carol, Ryan and I have been talking. We know you're not working anymore and that your pension is small. So we decided to give you a monthly allowance. For your expenses." I opened the envelope. 10 $20 bills. "It's for you to buy whatever you need. Food, personal items. You know." I looked at the money. $200 a month. To eat. To live. To exist in the tiny room in the back of my own house. "And this is enough?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Jessica shrugged. "Well, you don't have to pay rent or utilities. The house is expensive to maintain. The water, the electricity, the gas, it all comes out of our pocket, so $200 is fair." Fair. That word had haunted me ever since. Was it fair to live on $200 a month in a house that I had paid for? Was it fair to eat rice and beans while they ate lobster? Was it fair to watch them remodel my kitchen, my living room, my yard, while I watched from the window of my 10 by 10-foot prison? The desserts arrived. Towers of chocolate, creams with exotic fruits, artisanal ice cream with edible gold flakes. Yes, gold. I asked for a simple coffee. Black. No sugar. Because that's how I had learned to drink it in recent months. No luxuries. No extras. Just what was necessary to survive. Eleanor looked at me from her place at the head of the table. There was something in her eyes. Something I couldn't quite decipher at that moment. Curiosity, perhaps. Or concern. But then Jessica ordered more wine, and the moment passed. The dinner ended. The plates were cleared. The conversations grew louder with alcohol. I just wanted to go home. Well, to the tiny room. Because that was the only thing I could call home now. Ryan was laughing with the cousins. Jessica was hugging her sisters. Everyone was happy. Everyone but me. Then the waiter appeared with a silver tray. And on that tray, a black leather folder. The check. The waiter placed it in front of Eleanor first. She opened it, looked at the number, and her eyebrows raised slightly. Then she did something unexpected. She closed the folder and slid it down the table. Directly to me. Everyone stopped talking. Everyone turned to look. The black leather folder rested in front of me like a coiled snake. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to see the number. But Jessica spoke, and her voice cut the silence like a well-sharpened knife. "Honey, do you have cash? Or are you going to pay with a card?" She said honey. But the word sounded empty, cold, calculated. I looked up and met her gaze. Her smile was perfect. Too perfect. As if she had practiced this moment in front of the mirror. "I'm sorry?" My voice came out weaker than I wanted. Jessica laughed softly. "The check, Mom. How are you going to pay? Cash or card?" My heart was beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I opened the folder with trembling hands. And there it was. The number. $8,342.68. 8,000. Almost 2 years of my $200 monthly allowance. Almost everything I had left in my savings account after selling my car last month because I could no longer maintain it. $8,000 for a dinner I hadn't asked for a celebration I didn't belong to, For food and wine that others had enjoyed while I ate salmon and drank water. Well, Mom, we're waiting. Jessica's voice again, now with a note of impatience. I looked around the table. Everyone was watching me. Jessica's sisters with mocking smiles, the cousins with curiosity. The nephews had put down their phones to watch the show. Ryan was staring at his plate. He wouldn't look at me. My son couldn't look me in the eyes. And then I knew this had been planned, that I had been invited not as family, but as the fool who would pay the bill. I smiled. I don't know where that smile came from. Maybe from 40 years of putting up with humiliations in silence. Maybe from 8 months of living in a tiny room without complaining. Maybe from 65 years of being too nice, too understanding, too good. I opened my purse. Slowly. Everyone leaned forward, expecting to see wads of cash or a credit card. But I took out something different, something no one expected. I took out my old ID, the one that still had the address of my house. My house. The one that was now legally Ryan's. I placed it on top of the black leather folder, next to the number that said $8,342. I don't have any money, I said the words slowly, clearly, so that every person at that table would hear them well. I don't have cash. I don't have a credit card with that limit. In fact, I have exactly $120 in my bank account. And you know why I only have $120? Silence fell over the table like a heavy blanket. Jessica stopped smiling. Ryan kept staring at his plate as if it were the most interesting thing in the world. Eleanor watched me with narrowed eyes. I continued. I have $120 because 8 months ago I gave my house to my son, a house I bought with 40 years of work, a 3-bedroom house with a yard, a house worth more than $300,000. I gave it to him because they told me it was for protection, for taxes, for my own good. I raised my voice just a little. I wasn't yelling, but every word came out with the weight of months of accumulated silence. And after giving them my house, after signing the papers they put in front of me, they moved me into a utility room, 10 feet by 10 feet, a bed, a chair, a window that looks onto the alley. They told me it was temporary, that it was just while they remodeled. That was 8 months ago, and you know how much they give me a month to live on? I paused. No one breathed. $200. Jessica's sisters looked at each other. The cousins stopped smiling. The nephews put their phones away. Eleanor sat up straighter in her chair, her face changing from confusion to something darker, understanding perhaps, or contained fury. $200 a month, I repeated, for food, for hygiene products, to exist, while you, I pointed to the empty plates, the empty wine bottles, the half-eaten desserts. While you spend $8,000 on a single dinner, Jessica found her voice first. Carol, you're exaggerating. We give you a place to live. You don't pay rent. You don't pay utilities. Her voice sounded nervous now. Defensive. A place to live? I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was a bitter laugh that burned my throat. You call that tiny room a place to live? The space where I used to keep brooms and boxes? Where the sun doesn't come in? Where the bathroom is so small I can barely turn around? Mom, please. Ryan finally spoke. He finally looked at me. His eyes were red. I don't know if it was from the wine or from shame. Don't do this here. We can talk at home. At home. How ironic. At home, Ryan? In my house that's no longer mine? In the tiny room where you locked me away like a piece of old furniture that's in the way? My voice broke a little. But I didn't cry. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Eleanor stood up. Her chair scraped against the wooden floor with a loud sound that made everyone jump. Jessica. Her voice was low. Dangerous. Is this true? Jessica opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Mom, she's exaggerating. We take care of her. We give her money. We feed her. Eleanor took a step toward her daughter. I asked you if it's true. Do you have her living in a utility room? Do you only give her $200 a month after she gave you her house? It was an old house, Mom. It needed work. And she's older now. She can't maintain a house like that. Jessica tried to justify herself, but her words sounded hollow, empty. Older? Eleanor laughed. But it was a humorless laugh. Carol is 65. I'm 68. Am I also too old to live in my own house? Silence again. But this one was different. This was the silence before the storm. Jessica, I asked you a question. Eleanor wasn't yelling. She didn't need to. Her voice had that authority only mothers can have. Did you take her house? Do you have her living like a servant on her own property? Jessica looked at Ryan, searching for support. But Ryan kept staring at his plate. Coward. My son was a coward. We didn't take it. She gave it to us. She signed the papers voluntarily. Voluntarily? My voice sounded stronger than I expected. You call lying to me voluntary? Telling me it was for protection? I stood up too. My legs were shaking, but I held myself up. I signed because I trusted. Because he was my son. Because I thought family meant something. I looked directly at Ryan. I was wrong. One of the cousins coughed uncomfortably. One of Jessica's sisters muttered something about going to the bathroom. But Eleanor held up a hand, and everyone froze. Nobody moves. Nobody leaves here until this is resolved. She turned to me. Her eyes, so much like Jessica's, but with something more. Compassion. Humanity. Carol, do you have somewhere to go tonight? Any family? Any friends? The question took me by surprise. I thought about my life, about my 40 years of work, about the friends I had lost touch with because I was too busy surviving, about the family I never had beyond Ryan. No, I admitted, and that word hurt more than anything else I had said tonight. I have no one. Eleanor nodded, as if she had expected that answer. Then tonight you're coming with me, to my house. And tomorrow we are going to fix this disaster. Jessica turned pale. Mom, you can't be serious. Eleanor looked at her with an expression I would never have wanted to see directed at me. Pure disappointment. Serious? Of course I'm serious. You just invited this woman to an $8,000 dinner, expecting her to pay. A woman you stole a house from. A woman who lives on $200 a month. You thought I was going to be okay with that? We didn't steal anything. The house is legally in Ryan's name. Jessica tried to defend the indefensible. Legality and morality are two different things, daughter. And you know the difference. Eleanor took off her pearl necklace. That necklace that had been shining all night. She put it on the table. This is worth $12,000. Pay for it with this. And then we are going to have a very long conversation about values and decency. The waiter, who had been watching everything from a safe distance, approached nervously. He took the necklace, looked at Eleanor. Ma'am, this is more than enough to cover the check. Would you like the change in cash, or? Eleanor cut him off. The change is for you, for having to witness this circus. The waiter nodded and disappeared quickly with the necklace and the check. I sat down again. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. Everything was happening too fast. Eleanor, a woman I barely knew, was defending me, paying a bill that wasn't hers, offering me a place to stay, and my own son was still sitting in silence, saying nothing, doing nothing. Ryan. I said his name softly. Look at me. He lifted his gaze slowly. There were tears in his eyes. But I didn't feel pity. I just felt tired. Tomorrow I'm going to get my things, the few things you let me have in that tiny room. And after that, I don't want to see that house again. My voice was firm now, clear. Not until it's mine again, or never. Whatever has to happen. Ryan opened his mouth. Mom, I stopped him with a gesture. No, I don't want to hear excuses anymore. I don't want to hear promises. I just want to get my dignity back. And if that means losing you, then so be it. The words hung in the air like smoke. Heavy, final. Jessica tried to take Ryan's hand, but he pulled it away. Something had changed in his face. Something had broken. Eleanor put her hand on my shoulder. Let's go, Carol. That's enough for tonight. I stood up. I grabbed my small purse. I looked one last time at that whole table, at those 12 people who had witnessed my humiliation and my liberation in the same night. I walked toward the restaurant exit with Eleanor by my side. Every step hurt, not from physical exhaustion, but from the weight of what had just happened. I left the table behind. I left Ryan behind. I left behind 8 months of silent humiliation. The doorman opened the door for us, and the cold night air hit my face. I took a deep breath. It was the first time in a long time that I felt I could truly breathe. Eleanor's car was an elegant black sedan, but not ostentatious. She opened the passenger door for me. A simple gesture that made me feel more human than I had felt in months. I sat down. The seat was soft. Comfortable. It smelled like expensive perfume and new leather. Eleanor sat in the driver's seat and started the engine. For the first few minutes, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of the engine and the night traffic filled the space between us. "I'm sorry." Eleanor finally broke the silence. Her voice sounded tired, defeated. "I had no idea what my daughter was doing to you. If I had known." She stopped, took a deep breath. "I should have known. I should have paid attention." I looked out the window. The city lights passed by like blurry stars. "It's not your fault. You had no way of knowing." I didn't tell anyone either. I was ashamed to admit that my own son had done this to me. The shame should be theirs, not yours. Eleanor turned on a corner. We were entering a neighborhood I knew by sight. Big houses, manicured lawns, the kind of place I never thought I'd set foot in. Jessica wasn't like this before, or maybe she was, and I didn't want to see it. She was always ambitious, always wanted more, but I never thought she'd be capable of something so cruel. Her voice broke a little at the end. We arrived at a 2-story house with a cream-colored facade and large windows. Eleanor parked in the driveway. "It's a lot for one person," she said, as if she had to justify the size of her house. "But I like the space. I like being able to walk without bumping into walls." She looked at me meaningfully. I understood the message. She knew what it was like to live in a tiny space. Or at least she could imagine. We went inside. The house smelled like lavender and clean laundry. The floor was light wood. The walls were painted in soft tones. There were paintings hung with care. Potted plants. A staircase that went up to the second floor. The guest room is upstairs. It has its own bathroom. Clean linens, towels, everything you need. Eleanor led me up the stairs. Every step felt higher than the last. Not from the physical effort, but from the unreality of it all. The room was 3 times bigger than the tiny room where I had lived for 8 months. A queen-sized bed with an ivory-colored comforter. A vanity with a mirror. An armchair by the window. Curtains that looked like silk. A bathroom with a bathtub. With a bathtub. I hadn't taken a bath in a tub since they moved me to the utility room. There was only a tiny shower stall I could barely fit in. Rest. Eleanor put her hand on my shoulder again. "We'll talk tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do. For now, just rest." She left and closed the door softly. I stood in the middle of the room, looking at everything, touching the bed to make sure it was real. I sat on the edge. The mattress was soft. My hands were shaking. And then, only then, did I allow the tears to come. I cried. I cried for the 8 lost months. I cried for the house that had been mine. I cried for the son I had raised and who had betrayed me. I cried until there was nothing left inside. I woke up to the sun streaming through the window. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Then I remembered. The restaurant. The check. Eleanor. The guest room. I got up and looked at myself in the vanity mirror. A 65-year-old woman with swollen eyes and messy hair looked back at me. But there was something different. Something in the eyes. A spark that had been extinguished for months. Determination. I went downstairs, following the smell of coffee. Eleanor was in the kitchen, sitting at a wooden table with a mug in her hands. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" I nodded, although it was a lie. I had slept little, but I had slept without the noise from the house in the background. Without hearing Jessica and Ryan walking through what had been my living room. Without feeling like I was an intruder in my own life. "There's coffee. Toast. Fruit. Help yourself." I poured myself coffee in a white ceramic mug. Black, no sugar. Eleanor watched me. "Carol, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest with me." She took a sip of her coffee. "When you signed the papers for the house, did you read everything? Did you understand what you were signing?" I thought about that day. About the papers Jessica had put in front of me. about the words I didn't fully understand, about the hurry they were in to have me sign. I didn't read everything, I admitted. Jessica explained it was for protection, to avoid taxes. She told me nothing would change, that I would still be the owner in spirit, that it was just a piece of paper. Eleanor nodded slowly. Were there witnesses when you signed? I tried to remember. There was a notary, or someone who said he was a notary. A young man in a gray suit. He came to the house. He was there for less than half an hour. He had me sign 3 or 4 different papers. Do you remember his name? I shook my head. No. Jessica called him. She said it was a favor, that he was coming because she knew him. Eleanor put her mug down on the table with more force than necessary. A favor, of course. She stood up and began to pace the kitchen. Carol, I think what they did to you isn't just immoral. I think it might be illegal, too. My heart started to beat faster. What do you mean? Eleanor stopped and looked at me directly. If they made you sign under pressure, without really explaining what you were signing, without giving you time to seek independent legal counsel, that's coercion. And if that notary was someone Jessica knew and who didn't properly verify that you understood everything, then the transfer could be invalid. Hope. A dangerous word, but there it was, growing in my chest like a plant after the rain. How can we find out? Eleanor picked up her phone. I have a friend, Arthur. He's a lawyer. He specializes in cases of family fraud and elder abuse. Elder abuse. The term stung a little, but it was technically correct. I was legally a senior citizen. I'll call him now. He'll tell us what options you have. She dialed a number, spoke in a low voice. I heard scattered words: urgent, possible fraud, property transfer, coercion. When she hung up, she had a determined expression. Arthur says he can see us this afternoon. At 3 o'clock. At his office. I looked at the clock on the kitchen wall. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. We had 6 hours. But first, Eleanor continued, we're going to your house. Well, the house that was yours. You're going to get your things. All your things. And you're going to do it with your head held high. Understand? I nodded. Even though the thought of going back terrified me. We arrived at the house at 10 o'clock. My house. The house where I had lived for 30 years. Where I had raised Ryan. Where I had sewn thousands of dresses on my old machine. Where I had planted the lemon trees that now shaded the yard. Eleanor parked in front of the driveway. Ryan's car was there. So was Jessica's. They were both home. Are you ready? Eleanor asked me. I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. We rang the bell. No one answered. I rang again. Nothing. Then Eleanor knocked. Hard. Insistent. Like someone who wouldn't leave until the door was opened. Finally, the door opened. Jessica stood there, dressed in gray sweatpants and a t-shirt. No makeup, swollen eyes. She had been crying. What do you want? Her voice was harsh, defensive. Carol is here for her things, Eleanor said with authority. And you are going to let her in. Now. Jessica looked at both of us. For a moment, I thought she would slam the door. But then she stepped aside. We walked in. The living room was just as I remembered. Well, not exactly. They had changed the furniture. My old brown sofa had been replaced with a modern beige one. The curtains I had sewn were gone. Now, there were minimalist blinds. My wooden coffee table was gone. In its place was one of glass and metal. My house. But it didn't feel like my house anymore. Where's Ryan? I asked. Jessica pointed upstairs. Still asleep. He drank a lot last night after you left. Of course. My son was sleeping while I came to pick up the pieces of my life. The utility room is this way. I walked down the hall. I passed by what had been my bedroom. The door was closed. I continued to the back. To the door that led to the utility room. I opened it. There it was. My life, reduced to 10 feet by 10 feet. The bed where I had slept for 8 months. The chair where I sat to read because there was no room for anything else. The rack with my 4 dresses. A box with my shoes. Another with old photos and memories. My hairbrush. My worn-out Bible. My entire life fit into 2 small suitcases. How sad was that? 65 years summed up in 2 suitcases. I started to pack. Eleanor came in behind me and looked around. I saw her face change. I saw her eyes fill with contained fury as she took in the space where I had lived. "My God," she whispered. This is inhumane." I kept folding my clothes. Methodical. Automatic movements I had perfected over these months. Fold, store, minimize. Make my existence take up the least amount of space possible. "Do you need help?" Eleanor asked. I shook my head. "I can do it. Thank you." But she didn't leave. She stood there, watching, as a silent witness to my humiliation. I packed my dresses, my shoes, the box with photos of Ryan as a baby. When we were happy. When I was just his mom, and he was just my son. Before Jessica, before the greed, before everything fell apart. Then I saw something under the bed, an old shoebox. I pulled it out. Inside were the documents I had saved for years. My birth certificate, Ryan's birth certificate, my marriage certificate to Michael, the divorce papers, and something else. The purchase papers for the house. The originals. The ones that proved I had paid every cent. That this house was mine. My heart started to beat faster. "Eleanor." My voice came out shaky. "Look at this." I showed her the documents. She took them and began to read them carefully. Her eyes moved quickly over the pages. "Carol, this is gold. This proves you bought the house. That it was yours, free of any mortgage. That no one else had a claim to it." She carefully put them in my suitcase. "Arthur needs to see this. Today." I finished packing. 2 suitcases, 1 box of photos. That was all I was taking from 8 months in the utility room. I stood in the doorway and looked at the space one last time. That place where I had cried so many nights. Where I had eaten cold beans because I didn't even have a microwave. Where I had felt like my life was worthless. "Goodbye," I whispered. And I closed the door. We left the tiny room. Jessica was in the living room, sitting on her new sofa, looking at her phone. She didn't even look up as we passed, but I stopped. Something in me broke. Or maybe it was fixed. "Jessica." She looked up. "I want you to know something. You can keep the furniture. You can keep the new curtains. You can keep everything you changed. But this house, these walls, this roof, I paid for all of it. With my sweat, with my hands. And I'm going to get it back." Jessica laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. "Good luck with that. The house is in Ryan's name. Legally. You signed the papers. You have 0 right to it." I took 1 step closer. Just 1. "Do you know what's saddest about all this? It's not that you took my house. It's not that you made me live in a storage room. It's that you convinced my son that it was okay. That's what I'll never forgive you for." The words hung in the air. I walked out of the house with Eleanor behind me. I heard fast footsteps. "Mom." It was Ryan. He had finally come downstairs. He was in the doorway, disheveled, in wrinkled clothes. "Mom." "Wait. We have to talk." I stopped, but I didn't turn around. "There's nothing to talk about, Ryan. It's all been said." He came down the steps, came toward me. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't think it would be like this." I turned around then, looked at him. My son, my baby, the boy who had grown up in my arms. "You didn't think what? You didn't think it was wrong to let me live in a storage room? You didn't think $200 a month wasn't enough? Or did you just not think about me at all?" Ryan opened his mouth, closed it. Tears were rolling down his cheeks. "Jessica said you were fine, that you were comfortable." I believed her. "You believed her because it was easier. Because if you admitted the truth, you would have to do something about it. And doing something meant standing up to your wife. It meant choosing between her and me. And we both know who you chose." I put the suitcases in the trunk of Eleanor's car. Ryan followed me. "Mom, let me fix this. We can do something. You can move back into your room. We can give you more money. I don't want your charity, Ryan. I want my house. I want what was mine by right. And if you don't give it to me voluntarily, I'm going to get it back another way." I got in the car. Eleanor started the engine. As we drove away, I looked in the side mirror. Ryan was standing in the driveway. Alone, small, like a lost little boy. But I didn't feel pity. I only felt determination. We arrived at Arthur's office at 3 o'clock sharp. It was a modern building downtown, marble floors, fast elevators, efficient secretaries, all very different from the world I had been living in these past few months. Arthur received us in his office on the 5th floor. He was a man in his 50s, graying hair, charcoal-colored suit, intelligent eyes that seemed to see more than you were saying. Eleanor told me a little over the phone, but I need you to tell me everything from the beginning. He sat behind his desk. Eleanor and I sat across from him. I took a deep breath and began. I told him about the house, about how I bought it alone, about Jessica and Ryan with the papers, about the promises, about the utility room, about the $200, about the $8,000 dinner. Arthur listened without interrupting. He took notes in a legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Carol, this is a classic case of financial elder abuse, possibly fraud, definitely coercion. He took the documents I had brought. He read them carefully. These original papers are crucial. They prove clear ownership. Now, tell me exactly what you signed when you transferred the house. I closed my eyes, trying to remember. Jessica put 3 or 4 papers in front of me. Long sheets with small print. The notary, or whoever he was, told me where to sign. He didn't explain anything. He just pointed to the lines. Sign here, here, here. It all happened very fast, less than 20 minutes. Arthur nodded. Did they give you copies? I shook my head. They said they would mail them to me. They never arrived. Arthur wrote more notes. Did they pressure you? Did they tell you that you had to sign immediately? I thought about that day, about the urgency in Jessica's voice. Yes. They said there was a deadline. Something about taxes, that if I didn't sign that day, I would lose important benefits. Arthur put down his pen. Lies. All lies designed to pressure you. He stood up and walked to the window. Carol, I believe we can fight this, but I need to be honest with you. It won't be easy. It will take time, probably several months. And we need to find irregularities in the transfer. What kind of irregularities? Eleanor asked. Arthur turned around. If the notary didn't properly verify that Carol understood what she was signing, if there were no impartial witnesses, if there was undue pressure, if the documentation didn't follow the correct procedures, any of those things could invalidate the transfer. My heart beat hard. Hope. That dangerous word again. What do you need from me? I asked. First, I need you to authorize me to request all the transfer documents from the public registry. Second, I need you to write down everything you remember about that day. Every detail. Every word they said to you. Every promise they made. Third, I need you to think if there's anyone who can testify on your behalf. Someone who saw how you were living, how they treated you. I thought. Neighbors. There were neighbors who saw me going in and out of the utility room. There's a lady, Mrs. Marta. She lives in the house next door. She would see me sometimes. She'd wave when I took out the trash from the tiny room. Once she asked me if I was okay. I told her yes, because I was ashamed to admit the truth. Arthur nodded. Good. We'll talk to her. Her testimony could be valuable. He took some papers from his desk. This is a representation agreement. If you sign it, I will be your lawyer in this case. My fee is $300 an hour, but given the circumstances, I'll work on contingency. I looked at the paper. Then I looked at Eleanor. She nodded. Do it, Carol. Get back what's yours. I signed the contract with trembling hands. Every letter of my name felt like an act of rebellion, like a declaration of war. Arthur filed the document in a folder with my name on it. Good. From now on, all communication with Ryan and Jessica must go through me. Do not talk to them directly. Do not answer their calls. Do not reply to messages. Everything through me. Understood? I nodded. Understood. I'll start work tomorrow. I'll request the documents. I'll investigate the notary. I'll look for any irregularity. In the meantime, you need to be in a safe place. A place where they can't pressure or intimidate you. I looked at Eleanor. She smiled. She already has a place to stay. My house, for as long as she needs. Arthur looked relieved. Perfect. That gives me peace of mind. We left the office with a strange feeling, somewhere between hope and fear. Eleanor drove in silence for a few minutes. Then she spoke. Are you hungry? I know a quiet place that makes the best home-style food. I realized I hadn't eaten anything all day. Just the coffee from the morning. Yes, I'm hungry. She smiled and turned at the next corner. The restaurant was small, cozy, nothing like La Maison Rouge. Here the tables were simple wood, the chairs mismatched. The menu was written on a chalkboard. It smelled like stew and fresh-made tortillas. We sat by a window. An older waitress approached with a genuine smile. What can I get you, ladies? Eleanor ordered chicken mole with rice. I ordered chicken soup, simple food. Honest food. My husband died 5 years ago, Eleanor said suddenly. Cancer. Fast and cruel. She took a sip of water. When he died, Jessica offered to help me with everything. The papers, the funeral, the finances. I thought it was love. But now, I wonder if she was just seeing how much she could inherit. Her eyes filled with tears. I never thought my daughter was capable of what she did to you. I reached my hand across the table and took hers. It's not your fault. You didn't make her this way. People make their own choices. Eleanor squeezed my hand. But I raised her. Somewhere, something went wrong. Somewhere, I stopped teaching her what matters. The food arrived. Steaming, aromatic. I ate slowly. Every bite tasted like normalcy, like dignity, like life. For the next few days, I stayed at Eleanor's house. We established a routine. I would wake up early and make coffee. She would come down and we'd have breakfast together. We talked about everything and nothing. About our lives, about our mistakes, about our forgotten dreams. In the afternoons, I sewed. Eleanor had found my old machine in the utility room and brought it over. The familiar sound of the motor calmed me. Arthur called every other day with updates. I've requested the documents. I've found the notary. I've discovered irregularities. The notary who signed the papers was suspended last year for professional misconduct. His certifications from that period are under review. If we find he acted improperly in your case, the transfer could be nullified. Every update gave me more hope. One afternoon, the doorbell at Eleanor's house rang. She went to open it. I heard voices. One I recognized. Ryan. My heart sped up. You can't come in. Carol doesn't want to see you. Eleanor's voice was firm. Please. I just want to talk to her. 5 minutes. Ryan sounded desperate. I came down the stairs. Eleanor looked at me. I nodded. It's okay. 5 minutes. Ryan came in. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. He had deep circles under his eyes. Wrinkled clothes. Mom. His voice broke when he saw me. Thank you for agreeing to talk to me. We sat in the living room. Eleanor stood nearby, like a guardian. You have 5 minutes. Talk, I said without emotion. Ryan took a deep breath. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. Jessica and we've been talking. We want to give you the house back. The silence filled the room. Eleanor and I looked at each other. Give the house back? I repeated slowly. Ryan nodded. Yes, we want to make things right. Transfer it back to your name. No conditions, no tricks. We just want you to come back. Something in my chest tightened. But it wasn't relief. It was suspicion. Why now? Why not 2 months ago? Why not when you had me living in that tiny room? Ryan looked down. Why? Because Arthur is investigating. Because we found out the notary had problems. Because our lawyer told us we could lose the house anyway and also face criminal charges. There it was. The truth. It wasn't remorse. It wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of the consequences. So you're not doing it because it's right. You're doing it because it's convenient. Mom, please. I know you're angry. But this is what you wanted, right? To get your house back. We're offering it to you. No fight. No long trial. Ryan leaned forward. We can sign the papers this week. Everything goes back to the way it was. I stood up. No, Ryan. Nothing can go back to the way it was. Because before, I trusted you. Before, I believed my son loved me more than a house. Before, I thought family meant something. I walked to the window, looked out at Eleanor's garden, the well-tended flowers, the green grass. If you give me the house back now, it will be because you decided to, because you had mercy. But I don't want mercy. I want justice. I want a judge to tell you that what you did was wrong. I want it on the record. I want you to face the consequences. I turned back to him. So, no, I don't accept your offer. Ryan turned pale. Mom, you're making a mistake. If this goes to trial, it could take years. You could lose. And in the meantime, where will you live? What will you do? I smiled. A sad but firm smile. I'm going to live here. With Eleanor. I'm going to sew. I'm going to get my dignity back. And I'm going to wait. Because I have something you don't. I'm right. I have the truth on my side. Mom. Ryan tried to approach. I held up a hand. Your 5 minutes are up. Eleanor, please show my son to the door. Eleanor opened the door. Ryan stood there, looking at me as if waiting for me to change my mind. But I didn't budge. I didn't move a muscle. Finally, he left. I heard his footsteps walking away. I heard his car start. I heard the silence he left behind. You did the right thing, Eleanor said, putting her hand on my shoulder. I know it's hard. I know he's your son. But you did the right thing. I nodded. Even though every part of me ached, even though my mother's heart screamed to forgive him, even though everything would have been easier if I just accepted his offer. But easy doesn't mean right, and I was tired of taking the easy path. That night, Arthur called. Ryan contacted me. He told me he offered to return the house and you refused. There was something in his voice. Respect, maybe. Yes, I refused. Silence for a moment. Good, because I have news. I found something big. The notary wasn't just suspended. He was working illegally. All transfers he certified during that period are null and void. Completely invalid. My breath hitched. What does that mean? Arthur laughed. A laugh of victory. It means the transfer was never legal. It means the house never stopped being yours. Technically, legally, you are still the owner. We just need a judge to confirm it officially. And with the evidence we have, that's practically a guarantee. Tears started to roll down my cheeks. But this time, they were tears of relief. How long will it take? I asked with a shaky voice. Hopefully, 2 or 3 weeks. I have contacts at the courthouse. I can expedite the process given the urgency and nature of the case. Carol, you're going to get your house back. And Ryan and Jessica are going to have to answer for what they did. I hung up the phone and sank into the sofa. Eleanor sat next to me. She didn't say anything. She just held me while I cried. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange haze of anxiety and hope. Arthur worked tirelessly. Every day brought new updates. He had filed the lawsuit. He had gotten an emergency hearing. He had subpoenaed Ryan and Jessica. He had found more evidence of the irregularities. The case was coming together like a puzzle where every piece fit perfectly. Eleanor accompanied me to every meeting with Arthur. She had become more than my advocate. She had become my friend. In the evenings, we sat in her living room with chamomile tea and talked about life. You know what's the saddest part? I told her one night. I just wanted to be a good mother. I just wanted my son to be happy. And somehow, that made me an easy target. Eleanor nodded. Love shouldn't make us vulnerable. But it does. Mrs. Marta, my neighbor, agreed to testify. Arthur interviewed her at her home. I saw everything, she told him. I saw Carol going in and out of that tiny room. I saw her taking her trash out the back door. I saw how Jessica treated her. Like she was invisible. Like she was a burden. Her testimony was recorded. Evidence, proof, documented truth. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. I didn't sleep the night before. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the guest room, thinking about everything that had happened, about all the paths that had brought me here, about all the decisions I had made, about all the ones I would make after tomorrow. Eleanor knocked on my door at 6 o'clock. "You're awake." I opened it. She came in with 2 cups of coffee. "Today's the day," she said simply. "Today's the day," I repeated. We sat on the bed like 2 friends preparing for a battle. "Are you scared?" she asked. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "But I'm also ready. For the first time in months, I'm ready to fight." I dressed with care. The same wine-colored dress I had worn to the dinner. The one I had worn when it all began. It was symbolic, in a way. That dress had seen me at my lowest moment. Now it would see me reclaim my dignity. I combed my hair into a simple bun. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was different from the one 2 weeks ago. There was strength in her eyes. There was determination in her jaw. We arrived at the courthouse at 9:30. Arthur was waiting for us on the steps. He was carrying a leather briefcase full of documents. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready?" I replied. We entered the building. Long hallways with marble floors, wooden doors with gold plaques, the smell of old paper and pending justice. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wooden benches. A bench for the judge. 2 tables for the parties. Ryan and Jessica were already there, sitting at their table with their lawyer, an older man in an expensive suit and a serious expression. When they saw me enter, Jessica turned her face away. Ryan looked at me directly. There was a plea in his eyes. Forgiveness, maybe. Or just fear. I didn't look away. I held his gaze until he looked down first. "All rise," a bailiff announced. The judge entered. A woman in her 60s, short gray hair, glasses, black robes. She sat behind her desk and looked at the papers in front of her. Case number 5732. Carol Miller versus Ryan Miller and Jessica Miller. Lawsuit for nullification of property transfer due to coercion and fraud. Her voice was clear, authoritative, devoid of emotion. "Mr. Stone." She addressed Arthur. "Present your case." Arthur stood up. He spoke for 20 minutes. He explained the whole story. The house I had bought, the papers they made me sign, the broken promises, the utility room, the $200, the $8,000 dinner. He presented the original purchase documents. He presented the recorded testimony of Mrs. Marta. He presented the evidence about the suspended notary. "Your Honor," Arthur concluded, "my client was the victim of a deliberate scheme to strip her of her property. She was manipulated, pressured, and abandoned. And all this was executed by her own son and daughter-in-law, people she trusted implicitly. We ask that the transfer be declared null and void, and that the immediate return of the property to its rightful owner be ordered." The judge nodded and looked at Ryan and Jessica's lawyer. "Mr. Delgado, your turn." The lawyer stood up. He tried to argue that I had signed voluntarily, that I had understood the terms, that I was living on the property rent-free, that I was receiving financial help, but his words sounded hollow, empty, especially when the judge interrupted him. "Mr. Delgado, how do you explain that the notary who certified this transfer was suspended at the time?" The lawyer stammered. "Your Honor, my clients were unaware of that suspension. It was an error made in good faith." The judge looked over her glasses. An error in good faith? Hiring a notary who just so happened to be an acquaintance of Mrs. Miller? Pressuring a 65-year-old woman to sign documents without independent legal counsel? Jessica whispered something to her lawyer. He shook his head. Ryan had his hands clasped on the table. His knuckles were white from the pressure. The judge continued. "I have reviewed all the evidence presented. I have read the testimony. I have verified the status of the notary, and my conclusion is clear." She paused. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. You could only hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. The property transfer made 8 months ago is declared null and invalid. The title of the property will be immediately returned to the name of Carol Miller. Mr. Ryan Miller and Mrs. Jessica Miller have 72 hours to vacate the property and turn over all keys. She struck her gavel against the desk. The sound echoed in my ears like victory bells. I couldn't hold back the tears. Eleanor hugged me. Arthur smiled broadly. It was official. The house was mine again. Legally. Irrevocably. Mine. I looked over at Ryan's table. He had his head in his hands. Jessica was crying silently. Their lawyer was gathering his papers with abrupt movements. They had lost. The truth had won. Furthermore, the judge continued. She wasn't finished. I order Mr. Miller and Mrs. Miller to pay Mrs. Carol Miller the sum of $1,600. $200 for each of the 8 months they forced her to live on that insufficient amount. This must be paid within 30 days. More strikes of the gavel. More justice served. More damages repaired. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright midday Sunday. The air smelled different. Cleaner. Fresher. Like after a storm. Arthur handed me a folder. These are all the official documents. The property title with your name. The eviction order. The payment order. Everything you need. I took it with trembling hands. Thank you, was all I could say. Thank you for believing in me. Don't thank me, Arthur smiled. You were the one who had the courage to fight. I was just the tool. He said his goodbyes and left. Eleanor and I stood on the courthouse steps. Do you want to go see your house? She asked. I shook my head. Not yet. Let them have their 72 hours. Let them pack. Let them feel what I felt when they moved me to the utility room. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. There was a difference. That night, Eleanor made a special dinner. Nothing extravagant. Roast chicken. Salad. Fresh bread. Inexpensive but good wine. We made a toast. To justice, she said. To dignity, I said. To women who get back up after being knocked down, we said together. We ate slowly, savoring not just the food but the moment. The triumph. The vindication. On the third day, exactly 72 hours after the ruling, Eleanor and I went to the house. My house. Arthur accompanied us with a locksmith. Just in case. But it wasn't necessary. The door was unlocked. We walked in. The house was empty. Completely empty. Ryan and Jessica had taken everything. The new furniture. The curtains. The appliances. Everything. Only the walls remained. The floors. The ceilings. The structure that I had paid for. I walked through the empty house. My footsteps echoed against the hardwood floors. The echo reminded me of how it used to be, when the house was full of life, of laughter, of memories. I went into what had been my bedroom. The walls were bare. They had left marks where pictures used to hang. Pictures I had bought. Photos I had framed. They had taken them all. I went to the kitchen. Empty, too. They hadn't even left the tiles I had chosen with such care. They had torn them from the walls. Only stains of cement and empty spaces remained. It was as if they had wanted to erase all trace of me, everything I had built, everything I had been in this house. But they couldn't erase the walls. They couldn't erase the structure. They couldn't erase the fact that this was mine. I went out to the yard. The lemon trees were still there. Old, strong, survivors. I went to the biggest one and touched its rough trunk. We survived, I whispered to it. We both survived. The tree had been giving lemons for 30 years. It had seen Ryan grow up. It had seen good times and bad. And it was still there, like me. Eleanor appeared by my side. It's empty, she said unnecessarily. Yes, I replied. But it's mine. And that's what matters. She smiled. What are you going to do now? I looked around. At the bare walls. At the empty spaces. At the infinite possibilities. I'm going to start over. I'm going to fill this house with things that really matter. Not expensive furniture. Not fancy decorations. Just simple, honest, real things. Eleanor nodded. I'll help you. For the next few weeks, Eleanor and I worked together. We bought second-hand furniture. A simple but comfortable bed. A dining table we found at a garage sale. Mismatched but functional chairs. Simple white cloth curtains. Basic plates and glasses. I didn't need luxury. I just needed enough. And for the first time in a long time, enough was more than enough. I went back to my sewing machine. I set it up in what had been my bedroom, now my workroom. I started sewing again, not just for me, for others. Mrs. Marta recommended me to her friends. They needed alterations, dresses taken in, pants hemmed. I charged fair prices. Not a lot, but enough to live. Enough to buy food. Enough to pay utilities. Enough to feel useful. The check for $1,600 arrived on the 29th day, one day before the deadline. I deposited it in my account. I didn't spend it all. I saved half, just in case. The other half I used to buy things for the house. A new blender, frying pans, soft towels, small luxuries that reminded me I was alive, that I had survived, that I had won. Eleanor came to visit 3 times a week. We drank coffee at my new table. We talked about everything. Her life. Mine. How we had gotten here. "Have you heard anything from Ryan?" she asked me one day. I shook my head. Nothing. He hasn't called. He hasn't come by. It's as if I died to him. The words hurt to say, but they were true. "And you?" Eleanor asked softly. "Do you miss him?" I thought about the question. About the honest answer. I miss the boy he was. The son I thought I had. But the man he became. No, I don't miss him. Because that man was capable of hurting me. And I don't need that kind of pain in my life. Eleanor took my hand across the table. "You're stronger than you think." One afternoon, I was sewing when I heard the doorbell. I left my work and went to open it. It was Ryan, standing on my doorstep. On the doorstep of my house. He had lost more weight. He looked haggard, tired. Old for his 42 years. "Mom," his voice was barely a whisper. "Can I come in?" I looked at him. This man who had been my baby, my reason for living, my greatest joy and my greatest disappointment. "What are you here for, Ryan?" I asked, not opening the door all the way. "To apologize. To try to explain. He stopped. "To ask for your forgiveness, for real this time." I hesitated. Every part of me wanted to slam the door, to protect myself, to keep myself safe. But another part, the part that had been a mother for 42 years, wanted to listen. "You have 10 minutes. I opened the door. We went into the living room. He looked around. At the simple furniture, the unadorned walls. "You took everything," I said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Jessica insisted. She said they were ours, that we had bought them. Ryan sat on one of the mismatched chairs. I tried to leave some things, but He stopped. "No, that's a lie. I didn't try hard enough. I let her make all the decisions. Like always." "Where is Jessica now?" I asked. Ryan looked at his hands. "She left. She said she couldn't be with someone so weak. Someone who couldn't even keep his own mother's house." He laughed bitterly. "Ironic, isn't it? She left me because I lost what she forced me to take from you." I didn't feel satisfaction hearing that. I just felt sadness. Sadness for everything that had been broken, for everything that couldn't be repaired. "Mom, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I hurt you. I know I was a coward. But I want you to know something." He looked up. His eyes were red. "Every night I wake up thinking about that tiny room, about how I let you live there, about how I did nothing, and I hate myself for it. I hate myself more than you could ever hate me." Tears rolled down his cheeks. I sat across from him. "I don't hate you, Ryan. Hate requires energy I don't have anymore. What I feel is sadness. Sadness that I lost my son. Sadness that you chose a house over your mother. Sadness that I don't know if I can ever trust you again." My voice was calm. No anger, no poison, just truth. But most of all, sadness because I don't know who you are. The Ryan I raised would never have done this. "I don't know who I am either," he admitted. "I lost my way at some point. Jessica had so many dreams, so many plans, and I wanted to give her everything. I wanted to be the husband she deserved. But in the process, I forgot to be the son you deserved." He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. "And now I've lost everything. The house, Jessica, you, everything. You didn't lose the house, Ryan. It was never yours to lose. It was stolen. There's a difference." I stood up. "Your 10 minutes are up. I need you to leave now. Ryan stood up too. Is there any chance? Any way you can forgive me someday? I looked at him directly. I don't know. Maybe. With time, with real actions, with true change. But not today. Today, it still hurts too much. Ryan nodded. He walked to the door. He stopped on the threshold. I love you, Mom. I know I didn't show it. I know I failed you. But I love you. I always have. I always will. I closed the door softly after he left. I leaned against it. The tears finally came. I cried for what could have been, for what would never be, for the broken relationship that might one day heal, or might not. That night, Eleanor came for dinner. I told her about Ryan's visit. She listened without interrupting. Do you think you'll ever forgive him? She asked when I finished. I don't know, I answered honestly. Forgiveness isn't something you can force. It has to come naturally, with time, with healing. For now, I just want to live my life, rebuild what was broken, find peace. That's wise. Eleanor poured more coffee. And what about your plans for the future? I smiled. I want to keep sewing. I want to make this a small business. I want to fill this house with honest work and a simple life. I want to plant more trees in the yard. I want to wake up every morning knowing I'm in my home, my space, my territory. Eleanor raised her mug. To new beginnings. I raised mine. To second chances. The months passed like pages in a book that finally had a good ending. Autumn arrived with its golden leaves and crisp air. My little sewing business grew. Mrs. Marta's friends brought their daughters. The daughters brought their friends. Soon I had enough work to keep me busy 6 days a week. It didn't make me rich, but it made me happy. And that was worth more than all the money in the world. I planted new trees in the yard. Orange trees, an avocado, rose bushes by the kitchen window. Each plant was a symbol, a reminder that life goes on, that things can grow even after being cut back, that there's always time for new beginnings. Eleanor helped me plant the avocado tree. In 5 years it'll bear fruit, she said, her hands full of dirt. And we'll be here to see it, I replied. One afternoon in November, 3 months after getting my house back, Ryan returned. This time, he was carrying something in his hands, an old wooden box. I recognized it immediately. It was the box where I kept old photos of when he was a baby, of his first day of school, of birthdays and Christmases. I found them in the storage unit where we put everything after we moved, he said. I thought you'd want them back. I took the box. I opened it. There they were, all my memories, my life in photographs. Thank you, was all I said. Ryan stood in the doorway, waiting. Can I come in? Just for a moment. I hesitated, but something in his face was different, more humble, more honest. All right, come in. We sat in the living room. He looked around. You've made it feel like a home again, he commented. It was always a home, I replied. You two just turned it into something else. But homes have memories. They remember the love. They remember the life. And slowly, that comes back. Ryan nodded. Mom, I've been going to therapy, twice a week, trying to understand how I came to do what I did, how I became someone capable of hurting you like that. I looked at him, really looked at him. There was something different in his eyes, less desperation, more clarity. My therapist says I spent years trying to please Jessica, trying to be good enough for her. And in that process, I stopped seeing what really mattered. I stopped seeing you. I stopped valuing what I had. Ryan leaned forward. I'm not looking for excuses. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet. I know I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that I'm working on myself, that I'm trying to be better. That's good, Ryan, I said honestly. Not for me, for you, because you have to live with yourself. You need to be able to look in the mirror without feeling ashamed. He nodded. I got a new job. At a small company. The pay isn't much, but it's honest. I rented a small apartment, nothing fancy, just what's necessary. And for the first time in years, I feel light, like a weight I didn't even know I was carrying has been lifted. We sat in silence for a moment. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was a silence of understanding, of two people who had been through a storm and were now seeing the sky slowly clear. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me tomorrow, or next month, or even next year. But I want you to know that I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep trying to be the son I should have always been. I believe you, I said. And it was true. Something in his voice, in his posture, in his eyes. It told me this time was different. But Ryan, you need to understand something. Forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. It doesn't mean you can just walk back into my life as if nothing happened. Things changed. I changed. And our relationship, if it's going to exist, has to be different. I understand. Ryan stood up. And I accept that. I accept that I earned this. That I deserve the consequences of my actions. He walked to the door. Can I come visit from time to time? Not often. Just so you can see I'm keeping my word. So you can see I'm changing. I thought about it. Once a month. On Sundays. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If you're even 1 minute late, I won't open the door. I'll be here, he promised. And he left. I looked at the box of photos he had brought. I took it to my room and pulled out the photographs one by one. My smiling baby. My little boy losing his first tooth. My teenager at his graduation. My son at his wedding to Jessica. There I was in all the photos, smiling, proud, loving. I didn't know then what was to come. But I also didn't know how strong I would be when it arrived. Pilar came over that night, as always. I told her about Ryan's visit, about the photos, about his promise to change. Do you believe him? She asked. I want to believe him, I replied. But I've also learned to protect myself. I've learned that love doesn't mean being blind, that family doesn't mean accepting anything, that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Pilar smiled. You've learned well then. We ate dinner at my little table. Vegetable soup I had made, bread that Pilar had brought, cheap but cheerful wine. You know, Pilar said, when I first found out about Jessica, I thought I had failed her as a mother, that I had done something wrong for her to be capable of what she did to you. But my therapist helped me understand something. Sometimes people make bad choices, no matter how they were raised. It's not always the parents' fault. It's hard not to feel guilty, I admitted. I also wonder constantly what I did wrong with Ryan, where I messed up. Pilar shook her head. You raised a good boy. The choices he made as an adult were his, not yours. You gave him love. You gave him values. You gave him everything you had. What he did with it was his choice. Her words comforted me in a way I hadn't expected. The first Sunday of December, at exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I heard the doorbell. It was Ryan. Punctual. He was carrying simple flowers from the market. White daisy. Not expensive rose. Not fancy arrangements. Just simple, honest flowers. I thought you might like these, he said shyly. I took them. I do. I put them in a vase with water. We sat in the living room. We talked for half an hour. About his job. About his therapy. About small, unimportant things. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about what had been broken. We just existed in the present for 30 minutes. The months passed like that. Ryan came every first Sunday, always punctual, always with simple flowers, always respectful of the time I gave him. Slowly, the conversations became easier. Slowly, I started to see glimpses of the son I remembered. Not the same. He would never be the same, but someone better, maybe. Someone who had learned. Someone who had grown through pain. In the spring, a year after I got my house back, Eleanor and I were in the yard. The trees we had planted were growing well. The old lemon tree had given its best harvest in years. The air smelled like flowers and fresh earth. You're happy, Eleanor stated suddenly. I thought about the question, about everything that had happened, about everything I had lost, about everything I had won. Yes, I replied, surprised by my own voice. I am happy. Not in the way I expected, not in the way I planned, but I am happy. I looked at my house, my yard, my hands, weathered by honest work, my simple but full life. I lost my son for a while. I lost my house. I lost my dignity. But I got them back. Maybe not exactly as they were, but I got them back, and that makes me stronger. Eleanor put her arm around my shoulders. Do you know what I admire most about you? She asked. Not just that you fought. A lot of people fight. What I admire is that you didn't let the bitterness consume you, that you didn't let the pain turn you into someone cruel, that you found a way to keep being yourself, despite everything. Her words filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. That night, I sat in my living room, in my house. I drank coffee from my favorite mug. I looked out the window at the yard where the fireflies were beginning to glow, and I thought about the whole journey, from that horrible dinner at La Maison Rouge to this moment of perfect peace. It had been painful. It had been hard. There had been moments when I wanted to give up, but I didn't. I got up. I fought. I won. And now, sitting in my own house, in my own chair, drinking my own coffee, I could say with total honesty something I hadn't been able to say in a long time. I looked at the stars beginning to appear in the sky. I looked at the trees swaying in the gentle breeze. I looked at my simple but genuine life, and I whispered the words that closed one chapter and opened another. Now, this is living.